All right, we're live on YouTube and on the channel.
All right, thanks, Joe. Trickling in.
Have it on speaker mode, so you're only seeing the active speaker. If you want to switch it to gallery mode.
Because you see my screen right now?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Oops. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I am going to be the chair in Amy's absence. She can't make the meeting tonight, so I'll be running things. I just want to let everyone know that today is a regular school committee meeting, Wednesday, December 9th. It's a virtual meeting. It's being recorded. It's a virtual in accordance with the executive order issued by Governor Baker on March 12th, 2020 to suspend certain provisions in the open meeting law, chapter 304, section 20. So with that, I'd just like to open up our meeting. Call the meeting to order. I have no gavel, so welcome everyone. I'm happy to see so many people in attendance. It's also, we're on Facebook and the YouTube channel.
Not on Facebook because the select board's on Facebook tonight.
Oh, we're on. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Joe. Do we have anyone for community announcements tonight? I mean, committee announcements, Karen?
Not me. I'm good.
No? Ted?
Sure. Today, there was a funeral for a former coach, a golf coach, Jim Hughes. Jim was a one-of-a-kind supporter, very active within the basketball community. His family was long-standing family in town. Hopefully tonight, at some point, you can be in our thoughts. And the only other thing that I would say is tomorrow night, sundown, happy Hanukkah. And my comments are brief.
Thanks, Ted. John?
I just had one thing, Suzanne, thank you. Our family has been part of the Big Blue football and cheer for many years now, and I just wanted to send out our thoughts and prayers to Fred Dubio and his family. I know Fred has been recovering, and he was the former president of the Big Blue youth football and cheer, and a coach as well. So just again, we've been part of that for many years, and just want to send out our thoughts and prayers to his family and to him. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Myra, anything to add tonight?
Yes, I was just saying that the winter season's about to start with all the sports, and a lot of the students are really excited, and they're just hoping that they can have a full season safe and everything, and so that none of the corona cases or anything interrupts their actual season. And some of the seasons just want to finish off strong if they have a sport in the winter.
Nice plug. Tabitha?
Hi. I was going to talk about how a lot of seniors who are applying to college have either heard back from their early decision or early action deadline. So some SHS students are being accepted into college. Some are going to hear back in the next couple of weeks. And everybody else has applications due around like the beginning of January. So all the seniors are working really hard to keep up with school, to keep up with college applications, and yeah.
Not to put you on the spot, but how's it going for people? Have you heard, like, are people hearing back positive things?
I know one of my close friends got into one of the schools she applied to. The rest of us are still waiting to hear back in the next 2 weeks, but it's looking positive, hopefully.
I have no idea. Like, it's like this time, this COVID is just like, what does it even look like? How about you? Did you apply early places?
Yeah, I replied restrictive early action to one school.
All right, good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to say thanks to Martha Raymond and Nell Donato for inviting me to the ELL parents group last night. That was just fun to be able to talk about the new school project. So I really appreciate that. And then I also just wanted to quickly talk about the Unpacking Racism forum that happened last Thursday. It was pretty well attended. It was really well attended, actually. So maybe a lot more people watched it on different channels versus participating in the actual forum. But at the actual forum, there was a good representation of people from town, lots of students. Myra, I saw you there, and a good representation of sort of like different ages in Swampscott, which was really great. And really great discussions. The moderator, Tammy Faye Menide, I think her name was, it was awesome. She's just really, she was so good at really forwarding the conversation and allowing everyone to have a really respectful dialogue. And I just wanted to say that as a school committee member, I sat back and listened to a lot of things. I was really proud of our students. I was really happy to hear some teachers speak up as well. But I just wanted to share with this group some takeaways from that meeting, because I thought there was lots of ideas for lots of different groups in town, or different ways to sort of address diversity, equity, and inclusion. But there were some specific takeaways from the school that people thought would be beneficial for the school. And a lot of them we heard from when the students came to speak with us 2 meetings ago. So we heard some of them, and I know Mrs. Gomdias spoke to some things that were some initiatives that were already happening in the school. But I wrote down what people were saying, and I just wanted to share them. For specific administration related things that could happen, recruiting, hiring more diverse staff, which is something we have talked about, including DEI and racism questionnaires as part of the interview process and background checks. And also including training for all new staff and current staff we have too about diversity, equity, and inclusion. There was some thought about having a middle school racism task force, because there was a lot of comments that it seemed to be a bigger problem there than at the high school, where there was ADL was sort of more present. As far as curriculum, a lot of people reiterated the need for anti-racism and culturally responsible curriculum, starting all the way at pre-K. There was a suggestion that there'd be some sort of graduation requirement to learn or unlearn racist behaviors. There's a possibility of some sort of projects that could be done at different levels of schools to explore Swampscott's history with racism, with different races, with another one was for the METCO, to strengthen the METCO family program and their integration into our community, and also to educate our Swampscott students about what the METCO program is, like, starting in the younger grades when kids start coming here, to really celebrate why they're coming here and what the benefits are to us and to the students that are coming here. So I thought that was a really good one. I know we have like a METCO Diversity Day, and we do celebrate the program. And I know everyone, from grades 1 through 12 are invited to that, but I thought it was a good idea to directly tell our students what the METCO program is. Heard a little bit of criticism that we have a district vision that includes social emotional learning, but no specific acknowledgement of DEI. Sort of no specific way that we're addressing that, although I think we understand that we are under that umbrella, but there was some people that thought there should be some earmarked objectives. And one really important thing that came out of this for the schools and for the whole town is to talk about how decisions are made, and to have some sort of a racial framework for which all decisions are made, where we say where we say who's missing, like when we make decisions, we say things like who's missing from the table, like who isn't being represented, who are we centering this decision on? Like, are we just talking about, you know, the white students in town? Are we including the MECA students? Are we talking about every age? Are we just talking about this age group? You know, we need to have frameworks about our discussions. And so every single decision, we really sort of center on racial equity. So anyway, those are some things that came out of that forum that I thought I just wanted to share. And I think we'll hear more about this because it was a really active group. And anyway, that's it. On to the next thing, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Suzanne. So my second topic will speak a little bit to that because Mrs. Raymond and I attended a METCO leadership retreat last week. That was great. But prior to that, I'd like to talk about, I brought to this committee last year and probably the last few budget years, we've talked about the high school and middle school schedules and the fact that we could find some more efficiencies if we somehow aligned our schedules. And so last year, prior to the pandemic, we were investigating DMG, which is called as the District Management Group, and we looked into consulting with them to take our district and our middle school and high school staff and leadership through visioning sessions, basically to come up with best practices for high school and middle school scheduling. There is, in investigating this, there is no one model that is best across the Commonwealth. It really is about each individual district, as many decisions are. And so I wanted to share with the committee that we had our kickoff meeting on November 20th with the DMG group, and Martha Seibert is going to be leading this work for the district because of the potential budget implications. And there are several goals to this project. And it's basically to conduct a detailed review of course offerings and staffing at each of the schools. It's to guide the school and district leaders through a vision setting process to create scheduling priorities, review and revise the current scheduling process to create a more efficient and effective school creation process, scheduling creation process, and to provide training to school-based and central office staff and best practice. We've often talked about, and Mr. Kohut has spoken about, like, I believe it was the Lexington schedule that has one stagnant block so that staff can be shared. So we are moving forward with this project despite the pandemic that we're in. And there is a more detailed timeline I can share with the committee at a different time, but our targeted completion with recommendations is targeted for March or April. So it's a pretty quick process. There are groups being formed that involve the educators and involve administrators, and there's data being shared with this group right now. Suzanne, I see your hand up. You're muted.
Sorry, the dog's barking. I was just wondering, as part of this evaluation, are we going to be able to look at middle school programming and specials in specifically thinking about, you know, is there a way to offer gym throughout the whole year instead of just in 22-day blocks, for example?
We're looking at everything. So we had an option when we signed on with this group to just do the high school. But we felt it was important. It was Mr. Kohut, Ms. Seibert, and myself. We felt it was important to do both middle and high school. And so they'll be looking at everything. They'll be looking at the programs. They'll be looking at the course offerings. They'll be looking at scheduling. And as I said, there are some budget implications potentially with this, which is why Ms. Seibert will be leading this work for the district. I can't see everybody, so if somebody wants to chime in because their hand is up and I can't see it, please let me know. Along the lines of what Suzanne was talking about, I've shared with this committee that I've been part of an equity working group with the METCO headquarters, and we developed and planned a leadership retreat that took place last week that Mrs. Raymond and I attended. There were probably 85 or so participants and leaders from Metco districts across the Commonwealth. It was a Zoom retreat. It was fantastic. Basically, it was to develop a shared Metco program, mission, vision, and core values. And what does it mean to be a Metco district? And that's part of what, you were just speaking of, Suzanne. There was a video shown there that was a documentary written by students and narrated by students that Latoya and I was talking with the leadership team that not only do we want to share it with the leadership team, we want to share it here at school committee. It really gave a great detailed history of what the Metco program is and where it came from and where it stemmed from. I learned so much myself. Eventually, I'd like it to be on the website. But more importantly, there was a guest speaker there, Mwadi Dabinga, who just had an energy and really brought home issues of equity and inclusivity and diversity. She was a wonderful speaker. And the other major piece to this that I knew going into this retreat that we were going to do is we'll be conducting an equity audit within our school district. I've attached a flyer here that I can share with you, but basically Metco is partnering with the beloved community to offer a free equity audit that typically runs between $30,000 and $40,000 for a school district to partner with them. It is a research project to compile policy recommendations and resources and a toolkit for districts. It's about 6 to 8 hours. They said 8 hours, but really it could be done in 6. And basically our leadership team takes this audit and participates in this. And once it's completed, we should get a report within a month that will detail, diversity, inclusion, and equity and where we stand as a district. Are we inquiring? Are we emerging? Are we developing? Are we expanding? Are we refining? And I think it's going to be a really good jumping off point for our district to figure out how to move forward, how to implement some of the things that you were talking about, Suzanne. We've talked a lot about implementing many of them, but how to actually take action. On top of that, there are resources from Metco to come out and do trainings and guide us through this work. But I'll just share with you briefly this flyer that talks a little bit more about it. I linked it here for the committee. So you come out with a racial equity toolkit, and we had a sample. What will we do with your data? Relationships between participating schools and academic performance for different student groups, trends in diversity, equity, or inclusion, and then determine common priorities that school communities set for improving diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it is the first step in many, and figuring out a roadmap for our district to be more inclusive, to be more accepting. And one of the things you referred to is our district strategy and how it focuses on social emotional well-being. One of the things that has been being worked on behind the scenes, along with all that's going on with the pandemic, is that we've been talking about our next district strategy, and we were going to expand upon what we've already been doing, as you said, Suzanne, in terms of the umbrella being social emotional, but getting more specific about that language of inclusivity and diversity and equity across the district. So the next district strategy, which we have started to draft, will include more language that's more specific other than just social emotional learning. In my superintendent's report, the part that is highlighted in pink was information I gave at our last school committee meeting, but I added these first few bullet points because I think it's important to bring up the most recent information here. Couple of things that people need to be aware of. We are facing challenges in our in-person hybrid model right now, because you're going to hear a little bit later, the number of positive cases and close contacts that are rising within our community are staggering and very alarming. Mrs. Mulcahy and myself are meeting with the Department of Public Health every week and being updated on things that are happening. And Mrs. Mulcahy is going to talk a little bit more about that as it relates to the student health update and to our discussion around the winter athletics season. We do have an issue currently at Stanley School in particular, where we're monitoring classroom temperatures, and our director of facilities is working closely with Mrs. Huntley to mitigate some specific classrooms where the heating systems are working, and even with the windows cracked the recommended amount, the temperatures are quite low. And so I just want the committee to know if you've heard about that, and also the community to know that Max Casper was on a call today talking about actually getting there and figuring out what systems aren't going right over there to get those classroom temperatures up. However, he also brought up the fact, and we've done this before if a pipe has burst or something, but given the fact that we're in facilities that require windows to be cracked a bit, if we have some severely cold temperatures, there may be a time where we're going to have to call a remote day because we just won't be able to keep those classrooms warm enough. And so we were talking about, you know, if there's wind chills of -10 degrees or -20 degrees, we're going to have to consider flipping to remote, because it just would not be able to keep, we wouldn't be able to keep those classroom temperatures warm enough. And this is mostly for middle school and elementary schools. The high school doesn't face these similar problems. So there may be times where a remote day is called for the elementary and middle schools, and yet the high school stays in person in their hybrid model. The other piece of information I'd like to share with the committee and the community is that we've made the determination that we're going to take down the outdoor tents likely next week and store them for the winter. So we encourage families to dress their students appropriately, because they still will be going out for, you know, mask breaks and snacks. We think it's best, despite the fact that we don't have a lot of snow on the ground. Too often in our district, we're chasing problems, and none of us want to be caught off guard with the expense of these tents that we're trying to take them down after a large snowfall. So they will be stored, they will be brought back out in spring, but they will be coming down. And that was in consultation with the building principals. I received an open letter from a group of parents that had concerns about things that were going on in the schools and what the committee was doing. It was an open letter to school committee, myself, and the select board. And my takeaway from this letter, there were a lot of good points in there, but I think there's also a couple of points that deserve further explanation. And one of the concerns of the parents is that the district hasn't explored other appropriate available spaces in town in terms of expanding our ability to educate students in person. And, you know, Blaney Street School was mentioned, gyms were mentioned, churches were mentioned. And I think it's important to talk about it not just being the space that is the issue. First of all, Blaney Street is being used by the YMCA, so that's not an option. I do know there are other available options. However, just with the movement of the 3rd and 4th graders to the high school gym has brought about a lot of considerations that would also have to be taken into account should we utilize other spaces in town. The first is, are we going to have to do ventilation studies for those sites? Because we know our buildings, we knew our buildings, but we didn't know the information we received. So what kind of quality ventilation would we be going into in those sites? More importantly, and the parents brought this up as well, you know, getting more educators for those children and for the remote children. It's not just about getting the educators, it's about getting the educational support professionals, getting the tutors. And I'm going to be incredibly frank right now that even when we try to fill positions, there's not many people looking to come into the school district right now. There's not a large pool. There are not a lot of candidates. We are using creative ways to advertise, to get people, to get qualified candidates in to do our interventions right now. So I think it's important for the community to recognize that there isn't that list of 400 people jumping to get into a school building right now. So that's number one. The other piece to this is that we would have to bus in the same way that we are busing the 3rd and 4th graders to the high school. So you're going to incur busing costs in addition to bus monitors. We're not going to put our little ones on buses without bus monitors. Nurses would be required at each of those sites. We have full-time nurses at our sites. We also had to get a nurse for Little Stanley at the high school for the 3rd and 4th graders. Administrators. It is difficult right now for Mrs. Huntley to be in 2 places at once. Her home base is Stanley School, but she also has the responsibility for those 3rd and 4th graders at that Little Stanley at the high school. She's had incredible support from the high school administration, but they have their own challenges and need to focus on their own students. So not only would we need administrative support, but we would need nursing staff. We would also need custodians and cleaning supplies and equipment, because those spaces would have to be cleaned with the similar equipment that we're using. Some of those sites, and most of those sites that have been mentioned, are used as evacuation sites for our students. There would have to be crisis plans developed for each of those sites. So I offer this information to those families, that it's not just about hiring teachers and moving students to a building. We're going to run into the same challenges we ran into when we were trying to reopen our schools: the ventilation, the staffing, the busing, the transportation costs, the bus monitor costs, the nurses. So there are a whole lot of pieces to just renting a space, maybe a community space that's in town. Another point that came up in that letter was that the district decided not to seek to procure and install portable classrooms. I want to speak to this a bit as someone who taught out of the Clark School portable classrooms for a number of years, that myself and members of our senior leadership team have experience with portable classroom projects. We didn't just dismiss this without giving it considerable thought. It's been our experience that procuring and installing portable classrooms from start to finish, it has an estimated time frame of 1 year to 1.5 years. So that's not something that could happen expeditiously, which is why we chose not to pursue it. And then finally, the remote learners that came up in that letter. We are working every single day to improve our models, whether they be hybrid, whether it be in person, whether it be remote. And we continue to work to improve our delivery models of instruction. One of the things I mentioned to this committee a couple of weeks ago, and the committee asked the question, was, when we look at that data in January, the mid-year assessments, are we waiting until January to make a plan? And I told you 2 weeks ago we weren't. And we have a phase 5 committee made up of educators from every level, made up from administrators from every level. And we've already had 2 meetings to look ahead to January to see how we can better serve all of our learners. And so that committee met last week, this week. We have another meeting next week. And so, Mr. Giantis, you asked me at the last meeting if we were going to be waiting till January. And I'm here to say we've already started meeting, and we will continue to meet right through that mid-year assessment data to make sure that we have a plan in place. So as with everything, there's always room for improvement. And we haven't opened the schools in a hybrid model and just sat and thought, well, this is fine. It's not fine. We continue to refine it. We continue to find better ways to do things and deliver instruction. We continue to provide interventions to try to close the gaps so that data that we showed at the beginning of the year will look very differently in January. Suzanne, your hand's the only one I can see. I'm sorry if I can't see other committee members.
I was just wondering, do we have a better estimate from the director of facilities about the timeline for Hadley? I mean, for Stanley repairs and getting kids back in there?
Our facilities meeting is Thursday mornings at 8 o'clock, so I don't have the latest. Ms. Seibert, do you have any update on that information?
I do. We've engaged an engineering firm to do the scope of work and prepare the bid documents. We're estimating to have the bid released right before the winter break, having an on-site meeting in January, awarding the bid late January, early February, work to commence immediately. So hopefully the timeline will line up and it should be done hopefully by the end of April is our early estimation right now. I don't want to overcommit. Things happen in timelines, but there is a timeline being developed right now with the engineering firm.
Mr. Delano?
I just have 2 points. The first being I believe, and I don't have my CARES Act in front of me right now, money's being spent on our CARES Act. We have the nurse and the IT, and that would be a separate question down the road tonight for Martha in regards to what we're going to do come January 1st for those. But the 1 year to 1.5 time frame from start to finish, can we at least, that seems longer than I can remember for when they moved in the Clark, the portable at the Clark and the old Michon. And I was just wondering, we can't be the only district, right? We're not the only district in this position. I would think if there would be a need for the remotes. I mean, is that a concrete figure on the year to year and a half?
That's been our experience.
Could we follow up on that to see if we could get movement on that? Because the problem's not going to be going away. So why not put another plan in place for whether it be the Stanley, whether it be another school?
So my question to you then would be, what is the problem we're trying to solve? If we're trying to solve the issue of the 8 classrooms at Stanley School, we have a time frame of potentially April. To have portables in place by that time is unrealistic. Or are we trying to bring more students in, which leads me to my first point of you're hiring not only teachers, you're finding a space for it, you're hiring teachers, you're hiring tutors, you're hiring ESPs, you're getting custodial staff. So I guess
I understand that. And the only thing that I am saying is, I think it would be a good move to at least write a communication to someone and say, draw up a plan for a couple of portables. What is the cost? And at least have it right as a good offense. Who knows what's going to happen, but at least would have that. And your plan, it may happen the way that you want it to. Hopefully it does, but why not have something in place, or at least a rough estimate of if we have to go down a different road, why not go down that different road?
Ms. Seibert?
I was just going to say my last experience with installing portables was in Reading Public Schools. We put in 6 classrooms, 3 different portables on 3 different sites, and the project cost was $1.5 million, and it required an appropriation by town meeting. So I appreciate the suggestion and recommendation, and certainly I can work with the facilities director to draw out a timeline, but it would require a town meeting vote, the amount of capital that would be required to support this acquisition.
Okay, I do think it would be worthy to at least explore on some type of proposal, because it's not going away. And I'd be remiss, I thought someone responded to that group that sent that email. Obviously someone did not. I apologize for that to that group. Looks like they spent a lot of time there. It's some good points that they had made in that, and hopefully the dialogue continues.
I think, Superintendent, is there a way to just to without spending too much time on this, because I think portables are in short supply right now because of the demand, because they have been used. I mean, I know when we were kind of thinking about portables as part of the school building project, doing some research about the price and setting up, putting the pads down and putting the plumbing and the electrical and everything, trying to gauge the prices and talking to different, I think we talked to 2 different vendors. I don't know. Is there a way to just maybe look at that again and just ask them what the lead time is on a portable right now to see if that's even a possibility to get them? I mean, I was thinking if the price to repair Stanley was so exorbitant that is it worth it? You know, thinking that, you know, hopefully we have a new school building there within 5 years. So would it be better to have portables if the price was so expensive? But then the price doesn't seem more expensive. It doesn't seem like it's crazy enough to justify getting the portables at that expense. But maybe it's worth just making the phone call to see what 4 portables, or well, 2 portables is 4 classrooms. So 2 portables would cost, or 4 portables would cost. I don't know, like.
So I'm hearing the committee directing us, which I don't have a problem with, to actually get some concrete figures and numbers. If that's what the committee is directing us to do right now, then we will leave this meeting. We will have our facilities meeting in the morning, and we will task somebody with getting that information and bringing it back to you.
I mean, to Ted's point, I don't think it hurts to have that ready, just to have that data as a point of reference, you know, because I sort of think we're going to hear back and say that there's no portables even available for 6 months, you know, and then there's the time to lay the pad and put the electrical and the plumbing. That takes a while as well. So I think that we'll know that emphatically, and then it won't be a question. But if it is a better option than we think it is, I don't know, and maybe it is something to consider. I mean,
we'll get that information from the facilities department. We'll task the facilities department with getting that concrete information and bringing it back to the committee at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think that would just be worthwhile to have.
I would say at a high level, I wouldn't want anybody to start diving too deep without getting just some basic high level information first. People are pretty busy doing, you know. Right.
I have a few vendors that I can reach out to.
Right.
I agree, Karen, thanks.
Basic timelines, basic costs without getting into too much nitty gritty, because I agree with Suzanne. I think what we're going to find out is that it's probably not going to be as quick as getting the kids back in Stanley.
Right.
Or people getting vaccines, and, you know, hopefully we're out of this. And
well, don't hold yourself for that one.
Okay, we have our orders. We'll make sure that we follow up on that tomorrow. The next item on my agenda, and the last item on my agenda, is the health update, student health update in winter sports season. As I said earlier, Mrs. Mulcahy and I are meeting with the Department of Public Health. She also attended the Board of Health meeting last evening. She'll be sharing some information with you, but I'm going to ask Mr. Kohat to kick us off with this presentation.
Sure, thank you. So as Myra mentioned, it's that time of the year again where we're typically thinking about winter sports, and as we move into this time of year and planning for a winter sports season, we have many things to consider, and we don't have a blueprint for this, right? This isn't something that we've done in the past. Obviously, we had fall sports with the different modifications, but those were all outdoor and they were different sports. So safety concerns along with logistical and financial considerations make preparing for this season a complex challenge. We will be completely transparent in our decision making, and we want to share all of the available information that we have so that the district can make an informed decision, and also so that the community understands the full picture of what we're looking at. We want kids to be able to play. We also need to make sure that kids are safe. One thing to keep in mind is that with the announcement yesterday of the rollback, there are some additional guidelines, or guidance, I should say, from the EEA that are forthcoming. They haven't come out. And I do anticipate that that will come out soon, probably this week, and that will give us some more guidance in terms of what that looks like. And just so everybody understands, the EEA is one of the state bodies that governs youth sports. And I'd like to turn this back over to Superintendent Angelakis.
Thank you. So this presentation is going to cover a couple of things, or a few things. The first is the health metrics and what's going on in the community in terms of increase of cases. It's not just the positive cases, it's the close contacts that are impacting the schools. Then Ms. Wolf and Mr. Cohart are going to take us through the MIAA regulations and guidelines and modifications. And then there are facilities considerations as well, the field house space for games and practice, sanitizing and safety, transportation, and spectators in space. So I'm now going to turn it over to Mrs. Mulcahy, our occupational health nurse, to take it from here.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I just wanted to go over a few numbers. This is like our COVID timeline that we've talked to the Department of Public Health about. And these numbers are very alarming. So we can start back on October 22nd, where there was 185 confirmed lab cases. In November 19th, around November 19th, there was 234 confirmed lab cases, and also the average daily incident rate was 15.2. Over the next time period up to today, things have rapidly increased. And I just want to point out, I mean, I think it's very clear to see on the screen, but over the last 7 days, there has been 56 new cases. So that is from November 30th to December 7th. That's very alarming. And when I continue talking about the next slide, I can explain a little bit more on why this is so alarming for the school related. But I think it's important to also say that as of yesterday as of today at 8 a.m., there's 366 confirmed lab cases in Swampscott, which is 20 new cases in just about 2 days. So the numbers are going up. It's very alarming. And I think that it just needs to be pointed out. If you want to go to the next slide.
I just want to add, thank you, I will. I just want to add, this is student information. Well, this is community information.
This is the community, right. The next part is all just like the student data that I've pulled. So,
but I do want to just point out your note at the bottom that this doesn't include probable cases or close contact quarantines. That's just simply positive cases.
That's correct. So I started pulling data from October 19th and to yesterday. And the student caseload right now is we're following about 246 cases. Now these cases include either COVID positive, close contacts, siblings, or symptomatic students. This is a little diagram just saying that our student as a primary are those individuals that are either symptomatic, COVID positive, close contacts, and the secondary are those siblings of those primaries that we want to keep a close eye on. So this is a diagram just showing you how many cases we're following within each school. So out of those 246 cases that we're following right now, Swampscott Middle School has about 75 of them. Clark has 26. The high school has 93 of those cases. Hadley has 31. Stanley has 14. Our little Stanley had about 3. And our pre-K had about 4 of those cases. And just as a reminder, our cases are consistent of positive cases, close contacts, siblings affected, and students who have COVID-like symptoms. And this is what our nurses are monitoring and going through and contacting all these individuals. And it requires a lot of work. So we can continue. So what I wanted to talk about tonight is out of those cases, I have determined that there's about,
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So when we talk to the families and we talk about these students, we have determined that there's about 20.5% of these cases are directly a potential exposure is related to sports teams. And that's pretty alarming. It's something that we are following. And so it's about 49 of the 246 cases right now. Another big potential exposure is our home. Either people are getting sick at home or becoming contacts at home, which is also alarming. And then what I also want to talk about is that, we can go to the next slide, is the potential for the increased risk of COVID within the schools. So the Department of Public Health, the town now transferred all their cases over to the community test COVID tracing center, which is run by the state. And when that happens, we will be unfortunately not getting information on a timely fashion. Right now, as you can see on this slide, that our Swampscott Public Health has been informing us of these COVID cases about 37.8% times. And that's huge. These are cases that we have caught prior to coming into our schools and also prevented potential exposure to other people. Now that CTC is involved, that is a higher, we're basically having an increased risk of COVID coming into the school, about 37.8%. And that's really alarming and something that, makes me uncomfortable. We are going to be starting to get cases, finding out that positive cases have been in the school, and we're going to get that information a lot later. And, right now it's a very large increased risk. So that's just something that I wanted to mention right now, and especially where the sports related exposure is about 20%. It's something that needs to be considered.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, because I didn't understand initially when we were meeting with Jeff and Nia about the fact that they are now farming these cases out to the state in the contact tracing collaborative. So that delay in us being informed of cases that are potentially in our schools is going to be more of a delay than it was when we were dealing directly with our local Department of Public Health. So Nia and Jeff, Nia is very concerned that the delay is going to cause an increased risks for our kids, our students and staff in our schools. So that was something I wasn't aware of. I didn't know who CTC was. I asked for that clarification, and after several conversations, I now.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So is the fear that the person isn't going to have their results and know that they are positive or a close contact?
Yeah, so it's
They're
multi-layered.
going to know that and they're not going to disclose it because they're self-certifying before coming into the buildings every day, correct?
Yeah, so that's it's a multi-layered risk right now. One is that we're going to have to really rely on families to self-certify that they are either COVID positive or a close contact. And also, just that delay in CTC getting involved with the case. People could potentially be getting tested, not getting the results, coming into school, and then finding out 2 or 3 days later that they were positive or are considered a close contact. And, if they are in that situation, if they are positive or a close contact, that's a potential risk inside the school for in-school infection. So
I can see that you might not find out you're a close contact right away, but I don't see why you wouldn't know that you are positive because you get your results direct to you as well.
Sometimes, but there has been problems with getting people's test results back. And also
that was true, but that was true when the Department of Health was doing it directly, right?
Well, so it also depends on what type of test. So there's about, we don't talk about the probable cases, but some people will be getting an antigen test and they'll get a positive antigen test, but we really rely on the PCR test, and that's what the state qualifies. So, you know, you could say that you have a positive antigen, but then we need a PCR test to confirm if it's a real case or not, because the antigen does have a possibility of being a false negative or a false positive. So
I understand that, but I'm talking about the people that are, say, going down to, you know, the free testing we have in town. They're going down there. I mean, it's packed every day, and they're getting their results back directly within a day or two, whatever the turnaround time is. They're not waiting for the Department of Public Health to call them, or now waiting for the state to call them. They're getting those results direct, correct?
Most of them are getting those results direct. However,
I mean, barring,
if they
you know,
don't-
there's issues with emails or whatever, but that's how the process goes. They contact the individual.
right.
Right.
But
So I
theoretically,
guess
once
the
that
question is, I'm just questioning that notion that we're automatically going to have a 37%, you know, higher risk, because it seems to me that that's assuming that individuals are not going to tell the truth that they've been positive. Do you know what I'm saying? That's what that sounds like to me.
Right. Well, that means that we have to rely on families to self-certify that they have been positive. And unfortunately, we have had families that haven't been very open with communicating with the schools about their test results. So it is a problem, and it's something that is alarming. And it's something that, you know.
Are we seeing kids and families that have self-certified and then you've had to pull them out of school because they've been positive?
Yeah. So there's been a couple cases where we've had to pull them out. And there's also some students who have been identified as a close contact that we've also had to send home.
Amanda, just a couple of things. Can we get this presentation of your stats? The 2 slides before, can we get that out to our parents? I guess, Pam, that would be a question to you.
It's up to,
We have a communication coming out tomorrow or Friday to families regarding the new CDC guidance on quarantining. They gave several options now. They've added an option of a 7-day strict quarantine. But as in other cases, we've made a decision as a district to keep everybody safe. So that communication will be going out, and I can add that information from the Department of Public Health that they shared with us and that we've just shared with you. There's a lot of information I want to send out in that email, and I'll just include that with it.
I think that would be really well received. And Amanda, just quick, I have seen, I think in Salem, in their district, and I'm only saying it for trying to understand in regards to the delay. Have you ever heard of pooled saliva testing?
no.
Okay. All right. I know the city of Salem is doing that, but I'm on my end, just for my own curiosity, I was gonna look into it.
Well,
But
I can
thank you
definitely
for
look
the
into it
note.
too.
I had another question about the one of the slides as well. On the percentage, it looked like 35% or so, it's not back on the screen, that says called in sick. What does that refer to?
So those are referred to as like students whose parents have called them out sick. So those are the good numbers. Like that's what we want. We want people to just call out if they're symptomatic or if they have been positive and or came in close contact. So that's something that we're really happy about, that's a higher number. But
do we know how many of those were actually COVID positive versus just they didn't feel
that's
good?
something that I can definitely pull. But it's also, you know, we're not just looking at just COVID positive. We're also looking at the symptomatic people that are coming into school, because although we've asked students to stay home if they're sick, we're still getting a lot of students coming into the buildings that are sick. And that's alarming, especially where the numbers are so high. And, you know, that's something that we want to really communicate with the families, that please keep the kids home if they're sick. They're going to be sent home right away anyways. And then they're going to have to follow the protocol. You know, we can't, with the numbers being so high, it's just it's just please, please keep them home if they're sick. Like, you know.
Like, I think like the messaging that has to go home needs to be different than what's happening now. I think like, I mean, I know people are tired of the letters that are going home. I know I talked to you about the superintendent, like the letters that are going home that said there's been a COVID positive case in your school and you'll be notified if your kid is a close contact, whatever. We keep seeing those letters over and over, but they don't have much information or usable information, and they're kind of a source of anxiety, and sort of people are not even opening them or looking at them anymore, right? So I think like a letter with some of your statistics, if some sort of letter was to be created to go home weekly and say, this is what happened in our schools this week, we need you to take advantage of this awesome service the town offers, like this free testing every single day. We need you to take advantage of that. We need you to keep your kid home. If we just keep reinforcing that over and over, like, this is what happened today. We had, 37 staff out because of close contact. Like, you cannot keep sending your kids to school with sniffles, like, or anything. I don't know. Like, I just feel like there has to be, if there's like a dashboard that we're keeping that we can just publish once a week and just show some metrics. I think.
So, Suzanne, you and I spoke about this today, and you're not the first person that's given me feedback about those letters. We received several communications about it's not saying anything. What I do want to say to the committee and the community is that was the agreed upon approach across the Commonwealth with all superintendents. As these cases arise, you're right, they're becoming a little bit meaningless, and because you're going to be contacted by DPH if you're involved at all. So what you and I spoke about, and what Amanda and I would talk about tomorrow at our meeting, is the potential of keeping even just a table showing at some of that information that DPA showed, how many positive cases, how many close contacts, without identifying information, but being able to provide that to families with a click or a once a week notice. That would be more helpful information, I think, for families to know.
Yeah, I think we have to really think about what the data is that we share. I mean, those two graphs, the pie charts, they're great. There's just a lot of information on there. And I think we just need to boil it down to the stuff that really matters. Like these are the kids that are out. These are the teachers that are out. This is how it's impacting, teaching and learning on a daily basis. We need you to all work together to keep your kid out of school, to tell us the truth when they've had close contacts, and just do the right thing for the benefit of everyone, because it's got to be. I mean, I can't even imagine how the teachers are keeping track of who's coming and who's going and who's remote and then who's hybrid. And I don't know. It's just like, and what kids are learning. It's just.
Are teacher staff numbers included in those numbers, or are those separate?
Those are separate.
And we are having challenges, right? We are having challenges right now. And that is another point I want to make, that Mr. Kohut brought up the fact that, there may come a time where one of our schools has to go remote because we don't have enough staffing, because these we have teachers who are close contacts. We have the numbers that were presented today do not include staff. So
do we know if we have any COVID positive teachers or staff right now?
We do. No. We do know. We do.
I mean, I think we just keep encouraging every single person to do this, like, testing that the town is offering for free. This is crazy.
But just as a reminder, they no longer provide testing to employees. You have to be a resident. So, all right. So moving along to the athletic update, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Wolf and Mr. Kohut. Welcome, Ms. Wolf.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to provide everybody with what's going on with the MIAA, how some of these modifications and such affect us directly as a district, especially given that we have little Stanley in the gym right now, which poses some other little challenges and so forth. So one of the things that kind of stuck out in my mind is that when the modifications were made and approved, one of the things that was said in the meetings, and I know I sent you along the links to the town halls as well as all the modifications so everybody could see it and hear it firsthand.
Which I do know, Ms. Wolf, that Mrs. Wright watched every single one of them.
I might not have watched the gymnastics one, but I did go down the rabbit hole.
I was right there with you, Suzanne.
God.
Yeah, time you'll never get back. But one of the things that stood out to me is that it was said openly in the meetings that the modifications that have been made do meet the EEA guidelines, and they're making it as safe as possible to play, but it's still not considered safe to play. So that stuck out to me right there. I want to get our kids out there more than anybody, but that's a little bit scary. And I will be open and transparent. I'm COVID positive right now, and I've just been diagnosed with secondary pneumonia as a result. So I'm living it. I get it. My whole family's positive, including all of my children, my parents, and it's a scary time for us. So I'm right there in the mix of all this, and I'm understanding it. But moving on, some of the other challenges are that the EEA and the MIAA have limited the size of rosters that we can have. So how many kids can be on our rosters and on playing surfaces at one time, which I'll talk about in a minute, but that's going to impact us financially when we look at that. 25 players on a court at the time. So when you have freshman, JV, and varsity basketball, for instance, you've got to filter one level completely out of the gym, sanitize and everything before you can even let the next level in because of the numbers that are allowed on playing surfaces and so forth. They've recommended that every student athlete has an assigned seat on the bench and they can only sit in that one seat, and that all the seats are 6 feet apart. And the thing that I found interesting, and I'm not quite sure how you do this, but they're asking that during games, nobody raise their voice, yell, or shout, or cheer, because that sends the droplets flying out of the mask and makes things even much more dangerous. I don't know how you have high school kids and coaches in the midst of emotional athletic events and tell them they're not allowed to raise their voice or cheer or get excited. That's going to be a big challenge. Masks used at all times. There's no mask breaks during the games like there were in the fall. And the big focus is on hand sanitizing. So one of the questions that I think of as a parent and as an athletic director caring for our kids is, if in the fall outside, our student athletes weren't allowed to touch a soccer ball for a throw-in or touch a field hockey ball to put it up and put it back down, why now are we playing basketball? And now it's okay with numbers soaring, being inside with, not having the outside air circulating, and now it's okay to touch the ball nonstop. These are just things that pop into my mind that I want to, as we all think. The other thing is no locker rooms are available. So everyone, including officials, has to come completely dressed for the game. This includes our hockey players. There will be no locker room. So they come to the rink dressed, and there's going to be what they call lace-up areas, meaning a place for them to put their skates on, socially distanced 6 feet apart, and then they leave and go home and shower and all that kind of stuff. And then there's very minimal game modifications. In the fall, you saw rule changes to try to eliminate incidental contact and all that kind of stuff. You're not seeing that for whatever reason now in the winter, with a few minimal exceptions. For instance, in hockey, when two people go into the boards to dig for a puck, they call it a scrum. They're only allowing 2 people in that scrum at a time. If a third person comes in, they're going to stop. But 2 people can go into the scrum and fight for the puck. One of them can leave, and another one can, and a different one can come and continue to fight. So it goes back and forth with those types of changes. In basketball, the only big change is that you're not going to inbound the ball from underneath the hoop anymore. They're only going to inbound it from the sidelines. But other than that, nothing's changed. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. This is just about the financial impacts that I want to be very transparent about. We talked about smaller rosters, which equal less user fees coming in. So basketball, the Sports Medicine Committee and the COVID task force said they only wanted rosters of 12. For whatever reason, when it went to the board of directors, they upped it to 15. The problem with 15 is you can only have 25 on the court at a time. So you have to look at 3 kids from each school and tell them to sit down, and they can't warm up with their team because there's too many people on the floor at that time. I'm leaning towards 12 for not only safety, but for the reason of, I just don't think it's fair to look at 3 kids on the team and say, you can't play right now, go sit down while everybody else warms up. But that's something we can certainly talk about. Our pool costs are increasing from $65 an hour to $100 an hour. And all of our meets are going to be home meets that will be virtual. So our swimmers will swim their events and we'll share our times with whatever school we might be swimming against. They'll share their times, we'll compare them, and we'll see what team wins, so that the kids aren't mixing with each other there. However, that means that, you know, we're paying pool time, whereas before, and paying for officials for every single meet, whereas before we'd only be paying for half of them. So we're saving a little bit on a bus cost, but the cost of the pool and the official exceeds what a bus cost would have been. And our rosters are going to be cut down because of the restrictions on numbers. We're expecting, my plan right now with our swim coach is that we could have up to 36 people on the swim roster, but only 18 would participate at a time. So that's something people would have to take into consideration. The other thing is Salem State University is not allowing any outside user groups to use their facilities. So that means we did not have an ice rink to use. I was able to secure Kazabuski in Saugus. However, there are changes. Salem State charged us $200 an hour for ice. Kazabuski charges $240 an hour. Salem State did not charge us for our games. They only charge us for practice ice. Kazabuski charges us 2 hours. So $480 per game. And I have to hire our own game staff and pay them, again, along with the officials and everything else. And they're not allowing any fans in at all. The rink will not allow fans. It's out of our hands. So there's zero gate money coming in this situation to offset those costs as well. Also at basketball games, with EEA guidelines, there's going to be a decrease or no gate whatsoever with revenue. The league has already voted to only have home fans. The EEA has said they're only allowing a maximum of 2 fans per student, and it has to be household members only. So no more, you know, telling mom or dad to stay home so that their girlfriend or boyfriend can come or anything like that. It's only supposed to be household members that come, and that's if the district approves having fans at all. Some districts have already decided there will be no fans whatsoever, and they're going to just live stream the games. But that's something down the road to look at. Okay, next slide, please. So just some considerations for anyone who did have a chance to watch the Sports Medicine Committee meeting. One of the things that they said is that while the Sports Medicine Committee didn't put it in writing, the epidemiologist who is from Mass General on the Sports Medicine Committee did say that one of the things that they're considering is anyone on a team that tests positive, everyone that was in the rink or the gym or the pool area or wherever the practice or game might have happened, the previous 2 to 5 days before that person tests positive are considered close contacts. So now you're wiping out every team you've played against in the last 2 to 5 days, your coaching staff, your game staff, and then we need to look into what does that mean for Little Stanley, which has their classrooms in our field house. How does that impact them as well? So that's another thing to consider. The other thing is with Little Stanley being in the gym, we can only use the wooden floor. We usually have to utilize the side courts on the rubber floors too, where the classrooms are currently, in order to get all of our practices in. I'm not quite sure how we're getting 6 basketball teams through the gym to practice on a daily basis when you can only have 25 on the court at a time. It just doesn't seem like there's going to be enough time to be able to do that. And the middle school gym is in the same situation where last I knew, and I'm pretty sure still is being used with classrooms as well.
Yes.
So that becomes another problem. Another thing to consider is we have cooperative teams with Marblehead for gymnastics and girls ice hockey, and Salem sends 2 hockey players to us for cooperative teams. So now you're introducing any close contacts and cases from those schools as well into our environment as well. So that's something to think about as well. Then the other question is, do we allow practices over the holiday break when we know people are all gathering? Because what's going to be the increase of incidences with that going on? And then the other thing is, we've been asked by parents, by coaches about middle school waivers for our boys and girls ice hockey programs. So now if we have middle schoolers playing within those programs and they're close contact, but don't find out until after they've gone back to school hybrid, now it's impacting our middle school programs as well. So those are just all the considerations to think about as we begin to process how we lay out winter sports, the effects that it's going to have on us academically as a town and individually with schools and all that. A good fair number of our winter coaches are teachers also. So it could come to reason that they would then be taken out of the classroom as a result of close contacts with athletics. So I just want to be upfront with that as well. So that's kind of where we're at right now as far as information that I wanted to get to everybody.
All right, questions are going to be coming. Go ahead, Ms. McCauley. Okay.
I just want to point out too that, while I was attending the Board of Health meeting yesterday, that as of right now, Mass DPH has not put out any guidance when it comes to like sports right now. And I think that should be something that's considered at this point. It's very alarming to me that they haven't put out any guidelines for this.
Well, I want to say, and Amanda, you know this to be true, that our Director of Public Health has tremendous concerns about moving forward with a winter athletic season and doesn't recommend that we do. He made that statement to Amanda and me yesterday during our meeting, but I put that out there.
I think that when I watched the town hall meeting for the sports medicine people that you're referring to, I heard them say that if a player tests positive, like in a basketball team, all the members of both teams, the coaching staff, and anyone in the gym will be a close contact, right? And then I listened to the basketball town hall, and I heard those people discussing the same thing, and they had a discrepancy because they said it can just be the player and just the players on the one team or the players on both teams, but not the coach, because the coach will have 6 feet of distance and be wearing a mask and won't be a close contact, and the fans are far enough away or whatever. And they were just saying it's all up to your local Board of Health to decide, which seemed really, really crazy. And this unbelievable discrepancy between what the rule was actually going to be, and that was concerning to me, because we're asking basketball players to, we're putting so many people at risk for this sport that it doesn't make any sense to me. It just doesn't make any sense that we're playing inside, and we're fortunate enough to have a field house. I know it's being used by students in addition to athletic teams right now, but all the teams we play don't have field houses. And if we go into a littler gym with less ventilation than we have, which isn't super up there anyway, it just seems crazy. And then it seems crazy that we're putting our coaches, who happen to be teachers as well, we're thinking that, Mr. Knowles, for example, has 300 elementary school students at Hadley, and remotely probably the whole district, right? And so if something happens to him, that's 300 kids that are affected. And then also, I was thinking about the athletic trainer. We need athletic trainers at all our competitions. So if the trainer is exposed at a basketball game, then we don't have the trainer for hockey or gymnastics or another sport. So do we have to get substitute trainers to cover those events? It just seems like there's so many, with COVID cases rising right now, and us talking about, that we don't want to be indoors and with close contacts. It just seems crazy to be having basketball. It seems slightly less crazy to have hockey since it's sort of, I don't know, not even that much. And really it seems like it's only okay to have skiing because that's outside. And I don't even know that we're even considering that, but it just, I agree with the recommendation to at the very least postpone this until 2 weeks after winter break. You know, that we're sure that, you know, that people who may have gathered over winter break have 2 weeks of testing and no close contacts or whatever, but this seems crazy.
Kelly, can I ask you a question? Just to clarify something. I hope you feel better too, by the way. On the sports health committee meeting, there was discussion on, I get the 2 to 5 days before, I get everyone, you know, can be affected by that, and the teachers as well, the coaches. Going down the road though, I thought they said that you could not test out. Did I hear that right?
Correct. And that's been the case in the fall too. If you're considered a close contact and you go get tested and your test comes back negative, you still have to quarantine.
Okay.
So that means that those kids and those coaches and staff and everybody else is still has to quarantine. So, you know, like a lot of our game staff, you know, a couple of, like the gentleman who does our game clock for basketball, you know, he has another full-time job, obviously not within the schools, but he would be quarantined. And that's, you know, if he is willing to still keep that job going on. I know a lot of officials are electing not to participate this winter in officiating. So that'll be a challenge too. And hopefully that'll be, you know, we'll have enough and everything, but there's a lot of that going on. And, you know, just to clarify, you know, when you talk about your local Board of Health or DPH making up some of the rules for close contacts, part of the frustration that myself and the athletic trainer faced in the fall was the discrepancies between localities. We're very strict, thankfully. Others are not. It was made very clear that wet masks are not effective and need to be changed on the regular. I had to stop a field hockey game because it was pouring out and the mask was wet. And I had a coach in my face screaming at me, calling me a goody, telling me that I'm following the rules, just let the kids play, blah, 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 blah. You know, it's a constant fight to tell people to put their masks on. And that includes our fans. You know, I have parents telling me that I'm ridiculous because I ask them to put their mask up while they're in the stands. And it's nonstop with us getting just yelled at nonstop by parents and by people that don't want to necessarily follow the rules, which is fine. But what, you know, then, you know, I hear from another school that had close contacts, but they decided instead of quarantining their whole team, they were just going to pick 4 or 5 kids that they would quarantine for whatever reason. That's what their DPH decided. And it was like, how did you come up with that rule? Like, so it's concerning that it is so different from city and town to town to town to town, and we have no control over it. I don't know at a practice how strict another school's being with their kids to make sure that their kids are doing the right thing and their coaches are doing the right thing. We have no way of knowing that when somebody walks into the gym. And we're going to be playing 2 different opponents per week minimum.
Ted, are you set?
Is the recommendation to postpone the season?
Well, we have a couple of hands. Ted, are you all set?
I am, I'm sorry. Hello.
Tabitha?
I just want to say as a student, like I do swim team and I've done it for a couple of years, and as important as it is to me, and like as much as I like to swim and be on the team, I do think it's more important to look at the safety of the students, the safety of the coaches, safety of like the community at large. And as much as like for swim and other winter sports teams, it'd be great if it could happen. Looking at the reality of our situation and our town and like our country, COVID's only getting worse right now. It's just the beginning of winter. It's probably not going to get better for a little bit. The vaccine is not going to be available to our demographic for at least a couple months. And just like in my opinion, safety and health is worth more than a season of sports. I know sports are really important to people, especially like traditions in Swampscott, but I think we should focus on safety.
Tabitha, that's so mature of you to say, because what we struggle with as adults here is just that, you know, I know how important athletics are to our students, but when you hear expressions like the next few months are going to be some of the darkest months. This is the darkest winter that's coming. You have to weigh the decisions with the safety. And you said that so beautifully. I'm so proud that you're one of our students that, and thank you for speaking up.
I agree.
This is your meeting. I'm not going to run it for you.
No, you're absolutely, Tabitha. Thank you. And you know, I want to express that too. What Ms. Angelakis just said is, I know the importance of sports. Sports are my life. They're my livelihood. It's what I've loved all my life. It's so important to me. It's affecting me on a personal level with my own children that are hoping to be able to participate in college and high school sports as well. But I have concerns about the safety of my student athletes, my staff, and the ability of those people to be able to do their full-time jobs and or go to school and learn. You know, where do we draw the line with those impacts? I guess that's the question.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on the school committee? I mean, everything.
Well, I'm just wondering when do we have to make the decision, or like, are we being asked to decide anything tonight? Or, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to just get down to like, what is the actual, do we want to call it off? Do we want to delay it? And when do we need to decide? Like, do you know what I mean?
So I can tell you that the MIAA has said that athletics can officially begin in the state of Massachusetts for those districts that approve it on December 14th. I had spoken with Mr. Kohut, and in light of us still having to have this meeting and waiting for the EEA guidelines, we had said we wouldn't start before the 21st at the earliest anyway. Registration would still have to be launched and all that sort of stuff. But games are not starting until January 8th as of right now in our league. So there is that time. But I think obviously answers for people sooner rather than later is probably good so that they know what they're doing. But those are the timelines as far as game schedules and so on and so forth.
Kelly, do you have a sense for the committee about what the other NEC districts are doing?
Lynn is not participating as of right now. Their Board of Health has said no. And then there's some people that are still waiting to hear, and others that have been told that they can start to practice, but they can't have any competitions until 2 weeks afterwards, and that they were going to assess after the holidays and see what the numbers look like and what happens. And then obviously with the announcement from the governor that just came out, people are kind of waiting to find out, you know, because if he sticks with the same guidelines that were for phase 3, step 1, sports like basketball and ice hockey can't have competitive games anyway. But we're waiting to hear clarification on that and how it affects youth and amateur sports.
Can we then do a delay until first week of January?
We can. I just want to be transparent that the end of the season is February 22nd. So I would say a delay is the way to go, but I just want everybody to know what we're looking at. It's a condensed season already. And I just don't know. I don't know where the numbers are going to be at, by the time we get through Christmas.
I don't know about the rest of the committee, but our next school committee meeting, is it the 6th or the 13th of January? I have them in both places, so I'm not sure. So that you need to take that into consideration as well.
Well, we
don't meet again this month because of the holidays.
I think
there's a workshop next Wednesday.
I think it's the 13th too. I think it's the 13th according to Maureen's Google Drive.
Okay. So there is a school committee meeting next week, but it is a workshop that you have.
Right.
Right. We can't vote.
This is crazy. It just doesn't, I can't myself in good conscience vote to have this season at this point. And I don't see voting on January 13th. I mean, the season will have started already. I mean,
can I just can I chime in for a second?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just want to say that as of now, we're still not seeing the full effects from Thanksgiving. We are just bridging that surge from Thanksgiving. So I just pulled up my calendar really quickly to look at the timeline. And Ms. Wool, you said that the end of the sports was when?
Excuse me, February 22nd? Or
So
actually 21st, and then the next season would begin February 22nd.
So I just want to say that because of the, like, if we postpone it and then we have holiday vacation, we would start seeing the effects of the COVID cases the week prior to the end of the season. So I just wanted to put that out there, that the timeline for this is very scary. So even if we were to start back up, let's say by January, right? Potentially we would see the effects by mid-January. So then we're talking about maybe 3 weeks of actual sports after the possible surge that would happen after Christmas. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Kelly, in the fall, we talked about if we didn't have a competitive season, there would be potentially the ability to practice, but it doesn't sound like we're even looking at that in this scenario.
My only concern with that, again, is cost with
coaching, all the same things.
All the same things, because, you know, we wouldn't have the visiting team as an issue, but again, if one of our student athletes, especially with the holidays and gathering and all that kind of stuff, we could have all the same problems.
I just wanted to be clear for people.
Mm-hmm.
So are we supposed to be voting on this tonight? Because I don't see a vote on the agenda.
Not on the agenda, but
there wasn't a vote on the agenda. I guess I'm hearing different things. You know, whose decision is it? Does the committee get to vote? Do we follow the recommendation of DPH, which clearly is not recommending a season?
Well, wait, who is recommending it exactly?
Who's recommending it?
Like who? Like, I mean, I don't hear a lot of voices saying we should be trying this. Does anyone, I mean, it doesn't sound like our local Board of Health is interested in doing this. It doesn't sound like our athletic director is. I mean, I know like in our heart of hearts, we want to see sports and we know kids need this social and this physical outlet, but, you know, I mean, we really are about protecting the safety and the health of our kids and our staff. It's just, I don't hear anyone arguing to start the season December 14th for one, but I don't even hear a strong, I mean, put it off till January, but I don't know what that does to, why would we say yes in January? Because all of a sudden there's no COVID? Like, I don't understand. I think we do need to make the decision for the sake of everyone to not drag this out, right?
Out of respect, can Mr. Cohut weigh in?
Sure, Ted. Yeah, it's a really difficult decision, and it's kind of how I preface this. I hear what you're saying. I don't know what's going to change. I do think these sort of announcement yesterday, I thought was kind of the other shoe to drop, so to speak, and then that would say, okay, we're kind of forced to not have a season, but that doesn't seem to be the case. And I do recognize the importance of athletics, and I do recognize some of the challenges that our kids are having and not being able to compete and bond and do all the things that go along with athletics. So yeah, I mean, my thinking on this was here's where we are in terms of thinking, and that there seems to be some other information that we would need to look at. I think the EEA guidelines, and then also what the public health folks think about this before deciding to move forward. But I don't know what that looks like in terms of a timeline. In other words, I don't know when those guidelines are going to come out. I assume this week. I don't know officially what the local health people think about this. I mean, we're hearing one opinion is that they're not in favor of it, but we haven't actually, seen that. We're talking about it right now. So I guess my thinking on this is where we are. I want to present this to everyone and see what we're looking at. And if there is any more information, to get that information as soon as possible and then make a decision. But I don't think if we go back to how this went down in the fall with sports, I know it's not necessarily school committee's purview to get involved in this sort of thing. Right. I think this was, from our perspective, more about just keeping everyone aware and making sure everyone understands that these are all of the factors at play with winter sports.
Well, I can say with full confidence that the local Department of Health does not support a winter athletic season. I don't know if the Board of Health can. So that is Jeff Vaughn and Leah Illingworth don't see how it can be safely played and how we can keep everyone safe. I don't know if the Board of Health took a stand. I don't know if it's the superintendent that makes the final call, but I don't hear, as Suzanne said, anyone here that's in support of this. I do have one question, Kelly. Is February 22nd, is that interim season that's supposed to occur?
Yes, that's considered fall 2 of the float season, which would be football, fall competitive cheer, indoor track, volleyball.
Okay.
That's slated for there as of right now.
I mean, so if we get some other guidance in the next couple days from this last governor's going back to stage 3, but I can't remember what it's all called. I don't know. Like we can meet and we have a school committee meeting next week. That's the workshop. I mean, we can certainly convene to do a vote or have a discussion if people want to do it like that. Like,
so, Suzanne, if I can just, and maybe I'm misremembering, but I remember when this discussion came up in the fall, we actually voted as a committee to empower the athletic director, I think, to use whatever information was. I think we were faced kind of this similar situation. We didn't have all the information. So we said we would let the athletic director or whoever we designated to be able to make that call with more complete information. I don't know if that's an option here, but I thought I'd throw that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think, superintendent, like, you're right. Like, we don't have, or Mr. Cohen, maybe you said this, like, it's not the school committee's purview to say yes or no to this. I mean, right? Like, last time we went with not having it, and then, there was kind of an uproar, and then we said, okay, we'll make it work. Or gave you the permission to go ahead and make it work, but we were outdoors for every single event, and we didn't have the number of cases we have now, and they were on the decline, not the rise. So, I mean, of course we can do the same thing and say, we don't think we should do it, but if something changes and you can make it work, right? I mean, not sure what, obviously I don't know what the answer is myself.
So
but.
I hear the committee saying that it is at the discretion of the superintendent, the athletic director, and the high school principal to make the final decision, given all the information.
Ooh, thanks for taking it off our plate.
I would agree. I would agree with that.
Yes, I would agree. Yeah.
We're going to talk again. Amanda, Dennis, Kelly, and myself will talk again. We'll get whatever information is coming our way, but we're not starting on the 14th, which is Monday, and we will be talking next week.
And then if you need us to reconvene, or if there's something we need to do or say or bless or not, we have the meeting scheduled for next week. We can hold our session later or earlier or something, right? And make it work. I mean, I don't think this doesn't have to be the end of the discussion, but yeah.
Okay. Can I move on to my other items?
Yes, so please.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate it. I have to find let's see. I'm just going to bring back up the agenda. Sorry. And all right, so I am going to bring up the October 1 enrollment report. We've talked about this before when we were looking at information, but every year, so there's a couple of documents here that I want to review. So we, several years ago, the information I'm going to look at first here is letter E, and that is what is the October 1 report? Several years ago, when I shuffled the administrative assistant's positions, and I created the position within my office called the data specialist. And the data specialist is responsible for a host of information, including the Aspen data, but also for the state reporting. And there are 3 reports that are submitted on October 1st. There is what we call a SIMS report, which is a student information management system. There's 52 student data fields per student. I'm not going to read this to you. I'm just going to highlight what is submitted. There's an EPIMS report, Education Personnel Information Management System, 38 staff roster data fields per staff person. And then there is student course schedule, which is the SCS, 13 data fields per course per student, that is across the district. So when we're referring to enrollments, we always refer to the October 1st enrollment. They're also submitted at the end of the year. So we have a June 30th enrollment. So, but the October 1 enrollment that you have here shows us the data compared to our June of 2020 student enrollment data. So I just want to share that with you. We are currently at 2,166 students. If I go back to the June 22nd, 2020 report, we were at 2,263. So we have 97 less students in our district. But one of the things I want to point out is our pre-K number right there. And I shared some of this information with you earlier. We have 40 pre-K students, whereas in June we had 67. Last year's kindergarten class was 163. This year's kindergarten class is 131. So that is some information for you in terms of our numbers. I could share with the committee the June 22nd numbers so that you could compare them, but this just shows you the breakdown of Nahant students, Metco students, total students by grade level, by school, and it shows you the breakdown of elementary students at 731, middle school students at 661, and Swampscott High School students at 700. So this is a report that is submitted October 1st to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and we share that with the committee each year. The next reports that I want to share with you are withdrawal and new enrollment reports. So the withdrawn student report you also received, and taking you down that one, we have, it shows each school's breakdown of in-state to private, in-state to public, and out-of-state students, and it goes by school. So if we are to jump to the bottom of this, it will show you that the total number of withdrawals was 140 students. While I'm showing you that, I want to show you the new enrollment, because this is typical, although the numbers are slightly off. Typically, we lose 100, we gain 100. 140 is higher than typical, but the new enrolled students are at 92. So we have 92 total. And this report is broken down by school, where they're coming from, whether they're coming from a different city or town or a different country. So 140 with total withdrawals, but we had 92 come in. And we're typically closer, like I said, 100, 110 to 100. Our numbers are typically closer. This is a little bit more of a discrepancy. But this information was shared with the committee in your folder, so I'm not sure if anybody has any questions that I can certainly try to answer.
Pam, I think a couple of meetings ago, I asked for the numbers of the homeschoolers, the 25, right?
Yes.
Give or take.
Yeah.
So that is within the formula for people that chose in September to homeschool?
So here, that's included on withdrawn students. So I don't know if the total is going to match up, but we have 2 from Hadley, we have 1 from Stanley, 4 from the middle school, and then there are none shown at the high school. I can certainly ask Dr. Bacon, who's here tonight, to bring forward maybe a more comprehensive report of that. But these are students that moved to homeschool versus the students that we already have who are being homeschooled. So these are people that moved to a homeschool program and had to go through her office to get an approved program of study for their students. So we do keep track of those numbers as well.
I have a question for Mrs. Seibert. I was just wondering if the school business administrators, or if there's any word on the hill about these decrease in numbers due to COVID, probably moves, and how they're going to affect our 21-22 budget, and determining what our enrollment is and stuff. And is there like a held harmless? Or are we going to be looking at last year's numbers to, I don't know. Do you know what I'm asking?
I do. I understand the question and I appreciate it. And it's something that was discussed today at our MASBO meeting. We had our bi-monthly meeting today. And by statute, the foundation budget is based off of the October 1 enrollment of FY20. So it's by statute, it's going to be based off of our October 1 numbers, which the superintendent just reported are 2166, which is, 97 less students. There was some discussion about hold harmless, which is most likely the path that will probably be taken, because it would require legislative action to change using October 1 enrollment data. So I would imagine that it's going to be a hold harmless situation. A lot of districts are in the same situation that we're at, this significant fluctuation in student enrollments across the Commonwealth.
So are we gonna know this before we start doing our budget stuff?
We had 2 legislative representatives that were there today, Representative Peisch and State Senator Lewis. There really wasn't any definitive answer on that yet, other than they're getting ready to start the FY 2020 budget development. There was a lot of discussion about the Student Opportunity Act and how they were looking to try and begin some sort of implementation of that in FY 22 as well.
Wow.
The other thing that came up today is that there is another $53 million in the FY 21 budget that's going to be allocated out to districts based on their October 1 enrollment, which for Swampscott is probably going to be about an additional, I'd say probably $65,000. For us, it's $25 per student plus an additional $75 per low-income student. So for us, I estimated to be around $65,000 that we're going to get in FY 21 through a grant. So it's money that will be directly to us through a grant. So we'll be able to appropriate as needed.
All right, thanks. Does anyone else have anything for the superintendent's report? We can move on, right? We can move on to, actually, what time is it? We can move on to, oh, Mrs. Seibert, you're up next. That budget timeline. Do you want to share that, Pam?
Yep, I got it. Thanks.
Thank you. So I wanted to briefly take us through the budget process, which typically begins in October with our enrollment analysis, ironically enough, and staffing reviews, but this has not been a typical year. And we will be having a somewhat abbreviated budget process as a result of the pandemic. Meetings will occur over the next couple of weeks to develop staffing plans for FY22 and all of our other non-compensation expenses. Just as a reminder for the committee, the Finance Committee and Select Board did approve a few years ago, actually, I think when I just joined Swampscott, a tax policy that limited annual real estate tax property growth to 2%, plus an estimated 425,000 for new growth, which to us it equates to about a 2.8% increase in our operating budget from the town. We do know that the Commonwealth is struggling to make ends meet, and the town is developing budgets that anticipation of cuts in state aid for next year. The superintendent obviously will recommend a budget that is meets the needs and the goals of the district. The timeline, if you want to scroll to the next page, please, just so we can see the timeline chart. My proposal for the timeline is to present the budget at 2 meetings in January. It would require an additional school committee meeting in January with a public hearing and a vote at the first February meeting, which would put us in compliance with the town charter to have the budget to the town administrator by February 13th. I didn't know if there were any questions specifically about budget development. I know the superintendent shared with the committee members the budget calendar that went out from the town accountant to the town department heads. They're being asked to develop level funded budgets, and in some cases where the non-personnel budget to look at 5% reduction if possible.
Wow.
Superintendent and I haven't really had any conversations around that yet.
John.
In terms of, oh, go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. No, thank you for this. And my question is more on the timeline, since this is kind of my first go around on the school committee on this sort of stuff. Will the committee get any sort of draft documents to be able to look at this prior to any of these meetings that you spoke about in January?
I'm sorry, I'm looking for my copy of it because I can't see it on the screen, it's too small. I believe that my proposal is to have the budget document ready and distributed to school committee members. I'm gonna have to really look at the screen. Thank you. By January, sorry, Lily's here too. Distributed by January 21st. And the meeting would be January 27th. So a week prior to the meeting, you'd have the entire budget document. In terms of budget guidance, in past years, it's been 2%, 2.8%. So I don't envision submitting a budget that's necessarily out of compliance with what the town administrator wants. As this is his purview, he will reduce our budget to whatever is going to balance the overall town budget. So if we submitted a budget that was 5% growth and we're being asked to come in with a 2% growth budget, he's just going to reduce it to what he needs it to be. So,
John, are you asking when you're going to see the budget, or I mean, because the 21st, Mrs. Seibert, it looks like that's the final budget, but we'll see it ahead of time when it's in draft form and we're working on it.
No, you'll get the budget book on the 21st, and it's the superintendent's recommended budget, which
Right.
we'll present to the school committee, which you have the purview of increasing, decreasing, asking us to make changes to it. And then once you take a vote, it becomes the school committee's recommended budget.
Oh, yeah. So before that, though, we see the draft of the recommended budget.
I mean, we typically meet as committee of the whole as we go along.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I was just trying to tell John that you'll get a chance to look at it and ask questions about it before it becomes the school committee's budget.
Thank you for clarifying. That's where I was trying to go with that, just to get a better sense of. So thank you for clarifying.
Martha, can I ask a question? I get the increase in the grant, 25 on the enrollment, 25 a student, 75 for low income. Eventually we can look at the data plus or minus on the low income as well. But during that MASBO conference today, did they mention anything to cover what the two positions, the nurse and the IT, going forward on that at all?
So
Or do you have a
no,
sense?
well, yes and no. There was some discussion today about what is and is not in that $900 billion secondary relief package being discussed in Congress right now, and how that may or may not be appropriated to schools and towns. We thoughtfully took a strategic approach to that when we met with the Finance Committee back in October, that some of the guidance around the money that we have been allocated right now was that it couldn't be used for budgeted positions, in which case we didn't want to change our budget and potentially create a situation where we couldn't use any future CARES money to continue to cover for those positions. So the money that is needed to support those positions was, and Mrs. Marshall can jump in here as well, was effectively transferred into the Finance Committee's line, where they could appropriate it back to us if there weren't grant funds coming to support those positions.
Correct. So that fallback is there if the federal government doesn't come through.
Okay.
And I will say that both state representatives that were at our meeting today said, you know, a lot of the FY22 budget is going to be contingent upon what type of federal assistance comes through, because the state certainly has used up a significant portion of their rainy day fund to get us through FY21.
Okay.
Anyone else have anything? I don't see any more. I don't. So Ted, that was your question. All right, so we'll move on. We'll move on then to then a hot negotiation update. I'm not sure who's giving that.
I can just chime in and say that, well, obviously committee members can as well. Our last session was December 1st, and I thought, I feel like it's an entirely different experience than it was 5 years ago, but I'll let the committee members that were a part of that speak. Ted?
I would say that it went very well, and truth be told, it really had nothing to do with myself, except some dialogue, but it had to do a lot with Martha's presentation. And I don't know where you stand, Pam, with the documents, or Martha, but I hope that at a later date, what you presented on the 1st, it was echoed by not only on the Swampscott side, but the Nahant side. It was a very productive meeting, and many kudos, of course, to Martha Seibert for her numbers and her spread for years past and future.
I think in summary, we agreed to produce a proposal in just 2 meetings. So we are, and I echo what Ted said, that Superintendent Parentozzi from Nahant had asked for some information, and in only Ms. Seibert's way was she able to provide that and so much more, that everything was in line, every I was dotted, every T was crossed. It was a great conversation. It was a great collaboration. And I do think we left it, I'll have to ask Amy, that we are supposed to be taking a look at actually a proposal. It would be the, I think, record-setting time to settle something. I think that's pretty much where we left it. Martha, would you say anything else?
Yeah, I would concur with your and Mr. Delano's recap that's we pretty much came to an agreement for another 5-year deal. It's just putting the numbers on the paper. So right. Yeah.
Wow. Impressive.
Mm-hmm.
All right. How about a tri chair update? I mean, Amy's not here. I don't know, Pam, you want to just?
Yeah, no, just speaking about, we invited the Director of Facilities, Max Casper, to the last tri-chair meeting, talked a lot about capital planning. And so I know he's working on that. He's talked a lot at leadership team meetings about, a 5-year capital plan, maybe going further out. So that was what our focus was. What are the needs of all of our buildings? And so I know that Max is working on that. That was the focus of our last tri-chair.
All right, anything else? Or we can just move on to the consent agenda. All right, the consent agenda is designed.
Sorry, I was just going to bring up that the negotiating team, the collective bargaining, will be starting negotiations with the ESPs probably in the next month or so.
Oh, right.
Already on the cycle again?
Yep.
Oh my God. All right. Thanks, Karen. All right, the consent agenda. It's designed to expedite the handling of routine and miscellaneous business of the district. The school committee may adopt the entire consent agenda with one motion. At the request of any committee member, any items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. So we have four items tonight. Regular session minutes from November 18th, 2 donations, one from Neil Duffy for the high school media arts program, specifically it looked like Mr. Doolett and TV studio equipment. A donation from Fidelity for the DECA program in honor of our very own Greg, and warrant 2120. So I'll take a motion to consider the consent agenda.
Make the motion.
All right, and someone want a second?
Suzanne, I was absent on the 18th, so I'm just gonna,
No, you're still allowed to vote for minutes, Ted, even if you're absent. I mean, you can
All right.
abstain if you want, but will you?
I'll second.
Second, thanks. Any discussion on this stuff?
Thank you for the donation.
Thank you for the donation.
Yeah, Suzanne, just one quick thing. So yes, I was going to also say thank you for the donations, and just a very quick question on the warrant. I know it's the last item, but I did look through those, and there was one item. I guess I just would like a little more context. It was one item for the boiler at Clark. It was $104,000 that was in there, and I was going through it. It was like a $41 electric bill. Then I come across this, and again, I just want to get some more context around if anybody on the administration side could provide any context on that. It just struck me as it was so large. It just jumped right out.
So the Clark boiler replacement is a capital project that was approved for $400,000. That was the second installment payment for work done. There's one final payment. The project was wrapped up at the end of October. So the overall total project cost was $374,000.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. That's very helpful.
All right then. Anyone want to make a wait? Do we make an oh? Can we just vote to accept it?
Yes.
All right. Sorry, I have to do a roll call vote. So Ted,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Suzanne, yes. So that's all good. And so how about a motion to adjourn? Oh, actually, before I adjourn, so next week, just a reminder, we're having the workshop meeting. It's going to be at 6:30. I think we'll send out invites for that. Maureen will get some dinner, have Dorothy Presser from MASC with us.
Is that in person, Suzanne?
Yeah, we were going to try a socially distant in-person meeting. I don't know exactly where it is off the top of my head. Probably at the middle school or at the high school library. Okay, so a motion to adjourn from anyone?
I'll make it.
And a second?
I'll second.
Great, all those in favor, Karen,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Ted,
Yes.
and Suzanne, yes. All right,
Thank
thanks
you.
everyone. Have a nice night.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Just give me a second, Suzanne.
All right, I just stopped. No.